I started as a solution architect and have kind of worked my way up from there. But I keep it back to my, again, first principles. What are the first things that worked for me in my career as a solution architect, going through Accenture and then Salesforce and all of this? What worked for
Yeah.
me? It was an extremely simple rubric, extremely simple framework, but it was in the beginning, initially, when you first get to a client site, it's what are you doing today? Right. And
Yeah.
I think that's the step that a lot of folks, when you talk about business transformation, business strategy, when you talk about how do you direct the ship a little bit better every single day, that's the step that a lot of folks, I think, gloss over. It's what's
Yeah.
the pie in the sky? We want to immediately run and we want to immediately go
Yeah.
to the next
Yeah.
thing, but we don't know where we
Yeah.
are, right? You
Yeah.
can't
Yeah.
change the ship 1 degree if you don't know where you're starting
Yeah.
from, right? You might end
Yeah.
up
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
spinning in circles. So it's what are you doing today?
Welcome to the Business Transformation Podcast. I am your host, Heath Gascoigne. This is the show where we talk to business transformators, business experts who their strategies and insights to help you start and turn around your business transformation. Welcome to the Business Transformation Podcast. And in this episode, we are talking to one of those industry experts. We are speaking to Pratik Desai. Pratik is a personalization expert. And if you don't know what that is, you'll hear about it in a minute, who helps clients do one-on-one conversations at scale. He is a digital consultant, has worked with a lot of FTSE. In America, we don't call them FTSE. It's the Fortune 500
500.
companies across all industries. Yes, that's right. Yep.
Yep.
Pratik.
Yep.
Yep. All right. So welcome to the show. Pratik, how are you?
I'm good. Yeah. Thanks for having me on.
Okay. My pleasure. My pleasure. Okay. So we had a little discussion beforehand. You've got a vast experience, but for the purpose of our audience, as we do all the time, as we sum down and get our conversation focused on 3 points. First of all, our topic is going to be value realization, and there's a little we might hear in this space and a lot of listeners, and in my book we talk about in the framework business benefits realization, but we're talking about value realization here. Second point being, so what is it? Is it well understood in the industry right now? What are they doing right, doing wrong? Second is there an approach that you follow with your clients as a consultant, helping them with their value realization? And what is that approach? And third, knowing what you've done, and now you've also, we'll maybe get a little touch into that. You have been for many years with a very large, I don't know what we call them, not a conglomerate, but they are massive. Well, probably one of the top companies on the FTSE, on the stock market in the States. But you've broken away, and now you're starting your own thing. So maybe a little bit of insights about how do you go from value realization for other clients. Now you're doing this for yourself. Okay, how does it sound?
That sounds perfect. Yeah. Let's get into it.
Alrighty. Okay, value realization. Tell us about that. When I talk about in my projects here, we talk about business benefits realization, and that is from a business perspective. But are you talking? Maybe you can explain to us the value realization. What is it?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about it, right? Because I think ultimately it's something that we have to define from project to project, right? There's so many ways to kind of talk about what value really is for a customer. So, I'll give
Mm-hmm.
you a few examples, but it really doesn't have to stop at this list. So, example number one is, hey, I'm paying for two platforms and we're going to transform to one platform. So, what is my operational savings not having to
Mm-hmm.
maintain two platforms, not having to manage two
Yep.
platforms, not having to
Mm.
talk to two different technology vendors? I have some sort of inherent value that I'm creating by consolidating down to this one platform. That's
Yep.
value. Maybe it's not realized revenue from the use cases you're pushing out there, emails you're pushing, or your website, or whatever it is. There's not a clear and cut revenue number that you've realized from this, but you're realizing
Mm.
value. Right? You've cut
Yep.
down on your operational costs. You're cut down on some of your spend. So there's massive savings there. And then a lot of value that we talk about that's not orthodox would be around what's your operational process, right? Can we actually make the lives of your marketers, your merchandisers, your et cetera, can we make their life easier because what they
Mm-hmm.
do is really important on a day-to-day basis. And the more output or the more throughput they have, the more eventual, it all comes down to revenue
Knock-on
eventually.
effect.
But
Yeah. Yep.
eventually they're going to create more value for you, but we have to create value for them. We have to create an operational efficiency for them. So there's a ton of value there that's missed when we talk about what is value actually, because it's always about dollars and cents, right? Now it all
Yes.
indirectly kind of ties to that dollars and cents eventually, but there's an inherent understanding that these are all value points as well. And then the last value point that I think we tend to miss is, can we create value for your customer, right? You're our customer, right? Fortune 500
Yep.
company come to us, they want us to transform their personalization engine. Well, how can we create value for your customer? So if we can remove friction, right? If we can help them with guided discovery around your product set, if we can help them with an easier experience to check out or an easier experience to actually transact with you as a business, that's value not only for the business, but that's value for your customer. And that drives
Yes.
loyalty, that drives retention, right? And eventually it drives dollars and cents. It all comes down to it, but we look at value a little bit differently here because it reframes the idea that value doesn't have to be maximizing some value on a dashboard somewhere where the dollars just need to keep going up and up. Obviously, that's the eventual goal, but it's really framing it to what is the value we create an inherent basis to actually get to that point. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So you think in terms or holistically for the client, but also there's a systems thinking. If you had some MBAs on the call, they would say there's a cause and effect relationship. One has a knock on to the other. You almost go like down the front end or then the front of the food chain, supply chain, or the start of the value chain, some would call it, and go, okay, where's it start and what's the knock on effect? Because ultimately, and as you sprightly said, that you've probably got the guys upstairs focused on the top line, bottom line, and it sounds like you're looking at everything from the top line all the way through the operations down to the bottom line. Okay, awesome. So when do you think, if a client calls you in for the first time and says, okay, we've got a problem, where do you start?
Yeah, let's start with what the problem is, right? So I think a lot of challenges. So this is where it gets interesting, because tactically, what I just said sounds really great. Tactically, how do you actually go about it, right? It's always going to be different from client to client. So I'll give you an example. For example, we had a client that recently came to us and said, okay, hey, we've got an abandoned problem. Okay, what does that mean, right? In the e-commerce world, it means you add something to your cart, you walk away from it, you never come back, you never purchase it. So you've effectively abandoned this purchase. So now we have an abandoned problem. Okay, great. Tell me more about this abandoned problem. Okay, most e-commerce, they'll have anywhere from a 3 to 4% target for a conversion rate. That's a great year for an e-commerce vendor. Okay, great. So we have an abandoned problem, which is 96% of our users don't actually do a purchase. Maybe let's say 60% of them actually add something to the cart, and making these numbers up, that's a large abandoned problem. That actually is, you have 60% of your customers and only 4% conversion rate, you have a very large abandoned problem. That's something we should actually go after. Great. On the contrary, I had a different recent customer come to us and say, we've got an abandoned problem. And most merchandisers will recognize that this is the hot, sexy topic that everyone's talking about today. Well, interestingly enough, they had a much smaller abandoned problem than they had what I would call an onboarding problem. So they came to us and said, hey, look at our data across from the initial landing of this person on a website all the way down to a potential conversion or a potential onboarding. They had a conversion rate of about 1.6%. They had an abandon rate of about 9%, and 60% of the users never actually viewed a single product. And so while it looked like they absolutely they have an abandoned problem, but the numbers game here tells us that the abandoned problem, if solved, they don't stand to actually gain enough revenue until they understand why customers are coming to their website and then leaving before viewing a single product, right? So they have an onboarding problem. Their customers are facing a friction point in actually interacting with their product catalog to look at, is there anything that I would actually want to buy? If we focus on the abandoned problem, we might solve the abandoned problem in 2 or 3 months. But from a prioritization standpoint, we only stand to gain this much. If we solve the onboarding
Yeah.
problem, that's a much larger group of folks that we can solve and create value for that eventually could
Yeah.
lead into that conversion, right? So it's analyzing tactically down to the what is the actual value that we want to create. If it's dollars and cents, that's pretty much that's a cop out answer, right? It's always dollars
Yep.
and cents. That's why we're all
Yeah.
here. We're all here to create value in terms of dollars and cents. But
Mm-hmm.
the answer really came down to, okay, we want to do dollars and cents. Well, how are we going to maximize that value? How are we going to optimize bringing those dollars and cents to you? And we reframed it as, yes, you have an abandoned problem, but you have a much larger onboarding problem and you have much more value to gain by solving that. And of course, as we went through it, we said, okay, we have a couple hypotheses as to why you might have a friction point in folks actually viewing your products. And we started to run some experiments. And as we started to realize, hey, these are your friction points, let's modify the UI in XYZ way. I can't give it away here, but
Yep.
XYZ way. And obviously we started to see folks go from onboarding step to viewing the product to converting, and solving that problem was what got them the most amount of value versus solving any other problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
About this,
Okay.
value realization, but also value optimization.
I like that. So there's probably three parts there. There's the maximize value you said earlier, optimize the value, and then it is well, I haven't said that word yet, and then it is the actual realization of value.
Exactly. And I'll be candid and say when I first started off, a year ago in saying, hey, I'm going to start my own business around this type of stuff and specialize
Yep.
around personalization topic as a whole, I was fixated on that last part, which was value realization. I found
Yeah.
through my career, I found a lot of systems integrators, a lot of consulting companies that are so hyper fixated on getting the job done that they forget to measure the value, right? They
Yes.
forget to,
Yeah.
hey, you were doing this job because you were attempting to create some sort of success for this person. You were attempting to create some sort of value out of this project, and there's so much fixation on did we get the deliverables done? Did we meet our project timelines? That the measurement of the value kind of falls off the cliff, if you will. And so
Yep.
when I started my journey a year ago to start my own business, I was fixated on that value realization, but I had to move upstream because we
Yep.
were, in the beginning, we were looking at problems. We are like, oh, there's so many problems we go after, right? So now we need to figure out
Yeah.
not only how do we
Which
realize value,
ones?
but
Yeah.
how do we optimize it? We have to pick the right value, right? So yeah.
Mm. Okay. So you do have an approach then to do that. Wait, we might get.
Yeah.
Let me just recap. So,
Yeah.
we wanted to cover the one we wanted to cover. What is the industry doing well right now with the value realization? Maybe they're really new to the concept. What is working for them, and what's maybe you come into clients and they go, well, I actually never thought of it that way. I don't look at it that way. Maybe I find with the work that I do, and you probably find the same thing, is when you might see a problem that the client's going through and it's almost like in front of their face. And then you have to go, you step them through the process they're going through and say, do you see that problem? And they go, oh, well, yeah. It's like, why couldn't you have seen that yourself? Because they're in the business, not working on the business.
It's exactly what it is. I want to give credit to everyone out there that has a hard job in trying to figure out how to navigate their day to day every single moment of their lives and their careers. At that point, credit where credit's due. But the reason we have a business, the reason we do what we do is because it's exactly what you said. It's really hard to go in the business and constantly
Mm.
fight fires. It's no secret, macroeconomically, budgets have been cut everywhere. Everyone's wearing 3, 4, 5 different hats. And so they're
Yep.
trying to keep afloat. They're trying to keep the entire ship moving,
Yeah.
and constantly like plugging these holes that no one's looking at, hey, are we moving the ship in the right direction? As long as it's floating, everyone's happy at this
Yeah.
point, right? So,
Yeah.
but are we
Yeah.
moving in the right
Yeah.
direction? And that's where we come in
Yep.
a little bit and say, hey, look, you guys keep the ship afloat, keep plugging those holes, but we're gonna figure out are we directing the ship in the right direction? We're gonna help you with that a little bit and place a little bit of bets on maybe this isn't the correct heading and it's all data driven, right? So kind of answering your question a little bit here in terms of how do you go about it? We'll talk about the methodology, but a lot of what we do is based on analytics, right? It's getting analytics
Yep.
from your mobile app, your web app, your emails. It's gathering all this data and understanding a holistic picture of what does this journey look like from start to finish for a customer, right? From the moment they start interacting with you to the moment they actually convert again and again. What does that journey look like? And give me data from step to step to step. Where are we losing customers? What step is the most ill-optimized step? That's the one we want to go after. Or what step is the one that we have the most to gain? That's the step we want to go
Yep.
after. All of this is data driven. We want to look at your data. If you don't have the data, we can help you implement certain technologies to get that data and start to look at it in a meaningful data driven way. And then we decide, are we directing the ship in the right way? But credit to where credit's due. A lot of people have
Yep.
some seriously difficult jobs right now, and we're just coming in to actually supplement their team to say, hey, we'll take a little bit of that lift off of your plate and help you kind of direct the ship a little bit. And obviously,
Yep.
we'll get into the methodology in here in a second, but that's
Yeah.
what we're doing.
Okay. I like how you're talking about directing the ship, because we talk about transformation, and I see in the market there's maybe I think, not to say confusion, and I don't think some consultants, our colleagues, our peers, is helping the situation where there's a difference between, and I like how you talk direction, in my maybe lame or layman, was it layman terms, is direction is about transformation, where you're going to turn the ship. It's one thing when you talk about optimizing, and I like to pick on OKRs a little, because I see that banded around as that's the be all and end all tool to manage, to measure and manage your performance. I see that's performance on speed and efficiency. But if you go faster in the same direction, i.e. towards the rocks, you hit the rocks. But what you just talked about is turn the ship. You go faster, but if you don't turn the ship, you're going to hit the rocks. I see that's I think a key point there with the industry. What is they rightly, wrongly doing? I think what you're calling out correctly, or what I like to hear, is that you're helping them turn the ship. You can go as 100 miles an hour, like you even said earlier, is that, well, you don't have an abandon problem. You have probably initial conversion problem. You get that conversion problem, yeah, you can have an abandon problem, but you've got now 10,000 more prospects come through the top of the funnel. Before, you had 10,000 going away from the funnel. So yeah, so I think like what you're saying is direction is key first, getting that right.
Exactly. And if we follow the ship kind of analogy here, right? Changing by 1 degree over the course of a mile, over the course of 100 miles,
Yeah.
it changes everything, right? It changes everything
Yes.
about where you are. And that,
Yep.
bringing it back to what we do as a business, we can spend the next year trying to solve the abandon problem. We can spend the next year trying to solve the onboarding problem. But changing by 1 degree, picking this use case versus this use case, could have a massive impact to what your business actually
Yes.
realizes in terms of that value. Because focusing
Yep.
on the 9% versus the 70% changes everything. And it's
Mm.
just such a small thing, right? We're not talking about entirely different technologies. We're not talking about entirely different strategies that need to go up to the C-suite. We're talking about just
Yep.
focusing on one use case versus another, using the same technologies you have
Yep.
today, using the same setup you have today. We're just changing the sales a little bit, if you will. And we're going to put you in a different
Yeah.
place.
Yep.
It's all data driven, right?
Yep.
We have the proof. We just
Yep.
need to go after it.
Yeah. I like that. I like that 1 degree and the ship. I use the ship, but I never tied that 1 degree in it before. I use the analogy of golf and changing the golf club 2 millimeters and same power, same swing, but where the ball ends up going is like miles apart. And
Exactly.
and I think so. What would you see as a challenge from the client's perspective? You come in and you're saying you just want to do a little tweak, and they're going, "What? Just a little tweak? We got a big problem, and you just want to do a little tweak. We want a big solution to our big problem." And then they're expecting some grand solution that could, is going to take ages and cost a lot of money. You go, well, no. So have you found that when you propose a solution when it's only small little change, and they go, well, hey, we're expecting something else?
Yeah, I mean, look, again, I recognize how difficult it is to be in the industry today. So our specific industry, we target the folks that we work with are merchandisers, marketers, digital experience leads on the client side, and they have a difficult job. And I think it's made even more difficult by the amount, I guess, confusion that is being created by technology
Mm.
companies marketing their technology, right? There's a lot of technology companies that would be really happy if you just bought a new technology every month. And they'd be really happy if you did digital transformation every 6 months, right? And digital transformation is really sexy. I think everyone thinks it's really sexy until you show someone the price tag, right? You look at $1 million price tag, $2 million price tag, it's no longer sexy. It's not the exciting thing in the room anymore. And that's what we're trying to get at, right? Let's not just constantly do digital transformation. Let's not constantly solve these massive problems. Look, every company we work with today, every 4 or 3 years, they're doing these massive digital transformations. But they're failing to see value, which is why they're doing it again in 3 years, right? So I think it's answer your question, what are the challenges I see? I think challenge number one is there's a lot of technology out there that do a lot of similar things, and it's really hard to kind of cut through the noise and pick the one that's best for you. That's challenge number one. Challenge number two is I think we're constantly going after the next big thing in terms of use cases, right? So in my industry, personalization is the new sexy concept that everyone's talking about. Great. The reality is it's a branding exercise. Personalization, vendors have been doing it, clients have been doing it, folks have been doing it for years, for generations, right? The new aspect of personalization is that we can be AI-driven personalization. But we've been personalizing here. If you think about going on a tour guide when you're on vacation, you go on a tour and the tour guide asks you, hey, what do you want to do and what do you want to see and what do you want me to talk about? That's personalization, right? We've been experiencing these things for 10, 40, 50, 60 years.
Long time.
The concept is not new, right? These technologies are just kind of evolving on how they actually help you supplement and how they help you go to market and the AI concepts. But I think it's bringing it back to the simplistics, right? So you like to use the KISS model, keep it simple, stupid. Right? I think, going back to your question, what are the challenges? There's a lot of noise. There's a lot of technology vendors that would like you to buy their technology every month. There's a lot of confusion on, okay, I need to keep up with, all right, this vendor now has this new cool countdown clock on their email. This vendor now does abandoned cart. This vendor now does this. And it's kind of like the keeping up with the Joneses, if you will, where it's like, I need to keep up with the new sexy things that everyone's doing. The reality is, no, you don't. You need to focus on the problems you have, because every retailer is different. One retailer will have an abandoned problem. The other retailer will have a larger onboarding problem. Other retailers don't have loyalty programs to actually figure out who these people even are because they're not incentivized to give you their email address. That's an entirely different problem. So keeping up with the Joneses is really, really, it's making life difficult for our end clients because they're not focusing on the specific problems they have. So that's a little bit of a problem that we kind of try to reframe and say extremely data driven. Let's look at the data. Let's look at the problems you have as an individual retailer, and then let's reframe the technologies you have with what are the use cases they can actually enable for you.
Okay, so we have first challenge is a lot of noise out there in the market. The next shiny thing, I think you were getting at, is that we've got to keep up to the Joneses. Technology guys like that, and on the change projects I work on, they just want to jump to solution mode because then play with their new toys. Not necessarily the right toy, but it's a new toy. So what you're saying there, it's keeping up with the Joneses, solving a problem that was probably vendor driven as opposed to the business driven. What is the problem that you want to solve? And the next one is the personalization is I think that the trend in the market is maybe technology has enabled these systems to be faster or quicker, but it's probably back to, as you were just saying, to the KISS principle. Get back to simple, basic principles, first principles. What is the problem you're trying to solve, and then start from there. Or maybe what's the biggest problem you're trying to solve, and then as you were talking about earlier with that client that's looking at their conversion and the abandoned carts. Well, actually, you have a bigger problem. It's at the start of that funnel. Keep it simple. Alrighty.
Exactly. And I don't want to say that you shouldn't be buying technology, because technology can enable all of this, right? It's the constant need to jump from technology to technology that is getting folks into trouble. Because if you don't stay on a technology long enough and find the right technology and make sure you're doing the vendor assessment extremely efficiently, you're going to end up in this constant churn of never actually realizing value from any of your spend. And that's the problem that
Yeah.
we're
Yeah.
struggling with.
Then that brings back to the very beginning. Yes. Not realizing the value, not realizing the value. So those are almost like first principles for companies in general, is that don't follow, don't chase this silver object. If you've got it in the system, it's probably good enough. If you do want to change it, it's going to be 1 millimeter, just a subtle little changes. Yeah, and be mindful that this new technology is coming out, but only look at it if it does the one thing. Keep it simple, and it solves the biggest problem. Alrighty, so and then out onto that, you were talking about data driven. So you want evidence based. So let's keep it factual, not emotional.
Keep it factual, not emotional, right? And this is where I'm saying let's
Yeah,
throw the keeping up with the Joneses out, right? If retailer XYZ or company XYZ is doing this cool, sexy use case, doesn't mean you have to. It doesn't mean it'll provide you value.
yeah,
It just means it's providing them value because they had that pain point. Let's figure out what your pain points are and let's do the things that are going
yeah,
to solve those.
yep. Okay.
There's a well-kept secret in business transformation that no one is talking about, and that's 70% of business transformations fail, wasting time, money, and missed opportunities. There are 4 common causes of project failure: lack of business user involvement, lack of senior leadership support, changing requirements, and incomplete requirements. Clients, however, don't know this, and more importantly, they don't know what to do. They're either told they need reams and reams of beautiful PowerPoint presentations, but they're really just marketing documents. Marketing for the consultancy to convince you of the more work they will bill you for. They are just designed to run up the billable hours, or they're told to send their staff off to do training to get certified in old, outdated methods that result in 70% failure. Clients know if they bring in the Big Four, they will get a Big Four bill and no transformation. They load the project up with junior staff that produce interesting but useless documentation that they will tell you it is needed, that is full of jargon and the latest buzzwords. It sounds very impressive, but means absolutely nothing. It's well known in the industry. You get a Big Four in, they'll steal your watch to tell you the time, and you pay them millions for the favor. That's the old broken model of business transformation. If you're ready to move to the new model of business transformation, join me. My name is Heath Gascoigne, and I'm the author of this book, The Business Transformation Playbook: How to Implement Your Organization's Target Operating Model, TOM, and achieve a 0% failure rate using the 6-step Agile framework, HOBA, House of Business Architecture, that I created and have been using for over 15 years with my private clients, including the UK government, FTSE 100 companies and startups. I'm the guy that clients call to come in and set up and turn around their failing transformations. If you're a business owner, leader or manager, a change or transformation consultant, or you lead one, and you want to move to the new model of transformation, I'm holding a free 90-minute masterclass to get your 2023 year off to the best possible start with your transformation. Make sure you join me. You need to know where and how you're going wrong and what exactly you need to do and only do, not boiling the ocean trying to do everything, especially how to don't get caught in the interesting but useless documentation trap, and how to avoid joining the 70% that fail, but instead join the top 30% club that make business transformation a success first time, on time. Details how to register are below this video. Click the link below. Whether you're a beginner or an expert, we'll get you started.
So okay, that might get us on to our second point, the process. Is there a process that you follow when you go into? We might have covered it in different ways there, different
Yeah.
shapes, but is there a process that you follow? And what is that process? When you're coming into client and say, okay, let's help them with their value realization.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is probably kind of going to speak to my background as an architect through my career. I started as a solution architect and have kind of worked my way up from there. But I keep it back to my, again, first principles. What are the first things that worked for me in my career as a solution architect, going through Accenture and then Salesforce and all of this? What worked for me?
Yeah.
It was an extremely simple rubric, extremely simple framework, but it was in the beginning. Initially, when you first get to a client site, it's what are you doing today, right? And
Yeah.
I think that's the step that a lot of folks, when you talk about business transformation, business strategy, when you talk about how do you direct the ship a little bit better every single day, that's the step that a lot of folks, I think, gloss over. It's what's the pie in the sky? We want to immediately run, we want to immediately go to the next thing, but we don't know where we are, right? You can't can't change the ship 1 degree if you don't know where you're starting from, right? You might end up kind of spinning in circles. So it's what are you doing today? But from two lenses.
Yep.
From the technology lens and the business lens. And I like to meet with technology and business separately. So let's talk to business. What use cases are you doing today? And how do you feel about those use cases? So this is an emotion. And so I recognize I said, let's throw the emotions out, but as a starting point, we're going to understand the emotions. How do you feel about them? We don't have the data yet, so it's okay. Let's ask the marketers, let's ask the sales folks, the service folks, whoever the business is in our use case. How do you feel about the use cases? How do you feel like they're working? And if we can, I would love to even shadow them for a little bit, if time allows. Let me go with you. Let me see the client's process, and let me understand what is it that you do on a day-to-day basis, and how is this technology working for you? How is this technology not working for you? And so collecting and listening that feedback from the business, I think, is crucial into setting a foundation of where we need to go. And then in parallel, I'm also meeting with the technology group, because what I want to do is I want to understand, technology group, what is your schematic, right? What is your architecture systems diagram? Typically, you'll find that when you get to a client site, they don't have one. So making one is extremely important, which is I literally, if I like Lucid charts, I pull up Lucid chart and I start drawing bubbles. Tell me all about all your systems out there, all the systems that you believe enable the business team. Tell me about those systems. Let's draw them into bubbles. Okay, then how do they interact with each other, right? So let's draw lines between them. Is it an API that goes between them? Are you doing a file transfer? So it's really understanding how have you created a technology ecosystem that enables your business, understanding the data flow, understanding the cadence challenges. So this system integrates with this system, but it takes 5 days. So now you have 5 days old data that the business is using on the other system. So understanding all of those challenges, we draw that into the diagram, because now we can look at, okay, the business team has said that they have had these issues, right? And typically this is where you're going to start to see it all marry together. The business team said, oh, well, my data is 5 days old. Well, we know exactly why it's 5 days old, because we literally drew a line that takes 5 days to get from one system to another, right? And so you can start to understand and piece together the current state of things. And that's where you start
current state. Love it. Yep.
So that's where you start to bubble up where are your challenges. Do you have a technology challenge? Do you have a business challenge? Do you have an operational process challenge? Do you have all of them? Right? And that now starts to set the stage of, as you said, we call that the current state. And based on the current state, we've bubbled up 3 thematic issues, right? So it's operational challenges, business challenges, and technology challenges. And now we have 3 work streams we need to go after. And so the way I think about it, the way my team likes to think about it is we've got a change management problem. We potentially have a digital transformation project, right? And we potentially have a business user enablement project, right? Business users might potentially just not even know something exists, right? A lot of times we see IT organizations or SIs, they build a bunch of stuff and the business isn't even using it. They're using 10% of the entire, the entire system. How do we get them? So how do we get them to start using that stuff? But this is where, again, we take a little bit of a pause. We're still not going to run yet, right? Because now it's how do we validate the issues that we found with data? So we can validate with data very quickly and very easily, right? We can go and we can go
so we're in the validation stage.
We're in the validation stage. So now we can go out and say, okay, we need to actually go look at your customer data. We need to look at the funnel, right? You have a purchasing funnel and you have a retention funnel. We need to look at your funnels and we need to take a look at where are your pain points, right? So the business said, oh, I really want to do abandoned cart, but I can't, because by the time I know that someone has abandoned something, it's 5 days old. Well, is that important for us to go after? Because this is where we start to prioritize, right? Everything's a problem, but not everything is as the same size problem, or rather, not everything's the same value. And so,
not everything the same value or importance.
Or importance, exactly. And so that's where we get into, okay, well, the data is showing that the value of that problem you stated is not as large as the value of the problem of XYZ onboarding problem, right? So that starts to give us what we call our roadmap. Because now what we do is we take all of this information, we have our current state diagrams, current state architecture, we take our data-driven approach and we overlay it to what we call our priority matrix. And our matrix is an X and Y. So our Y-axis is what is the value that the business can get from actually achieving this goal. And the X-axis is what is the technology and business process lift to actually enable this use case. And so now you start to kind of see is the top left corner is the highest value, lowest lift from a technology perspective. And boom, you've got your low hanging fruit. Those are the items that you need to go after from a road mapping perspective. Those are the things that you need to go build immediately to start getting the most amount of value out of your systems, out of your architecture, out of your business process, out of your business users as possible. And it's not all just dollars and cents, right? It could be, as I said earlier, you've got two systems, 10% of it is being used over here, 10% of it's being overused over here, but the overlap just makes sense to use one of the systems. And it could be simple as that, or it could be, hey, go do an abandoned cart or go do an onboarding use case or whatever it is. But the idea is we went from an understanding of the current state, understanding the business pain points, understanding the technology pain points, overlaying that with the data-driven proof that there's certain value in solving certain things because the customer is seeing the pain points realized in their interactions with the business. Taking all of that, we bubble that into a matrix of what is the business value priority? What is the potential lift on the technology and the business process side? And immediately we go after the things that are low-hanging fruit. And now we've got a roadmap that we can all run after for the next 6 months, year, 18 months, whatever it is.
Okay, let me play you back to you. Okay, so if I got this right, first step is current state assessment. And you're doing that, and I like how you said it. There were two different conversations that you had. One was with business and technology. So in our approach, my approach is when you get into design or considerations for design, you take it to a solution design authority. It's made up of two bodies. One is a business design authority and a technical design authority. And then collectively they come together in a solution design authority. And I think you said that it's the same thing is you separate these two conversations. And the reason why I like to separate the two, because the technology guys are well versed in this exercise and that they know clearly what they want. And especially if they're chomping at the bit after new technology, the new shiny object, they want to get going. And so they are super motivated, but they're like pig in the mud. And so they're really rearing to go. The business guys have got, like you were saying, they've got a lot of priorities. So they're trying to balance those priorities and competing needs. So if they don't have their ducks lined up, they meet up with technology. Technology is just going to eat them. So I like how you said you got to separate those two. So we separated those two. You've had these conversations, developed your use cases. So what are you doing? And I like that in the case of business, the audience have missed it. You asked I think it's a good question, a great question. When you talk about user experience and user journeys, and experience is feelings. Is how did you feel? Like we get architects, business architects will document a process. And so here's the process. They say, yeah, but you got no way that the client has felt or understands, or you've no way of understanding the client's experience. And you do that through understanding how they feel. A process tells you what they do, not how they felt about what happened to them. And so as a key part there, I like what you're saying is you've got to find out how they feel about it. Yep. So you find out how you feel about them. And then, so how do you really do that? And you talk about shadowing. So you want to look over their shoulder to see how they do that. You're having the two conversations of business and technology. And that technology, and I like how you also said that you get it on paper. You get for the technology, you create a diagram. I'm a big fan of the diagram, so it gets it on the same page, right? So what you see, what I see is the same thing. Not like we have this conversation, I'm trying to mind read you and 10 people in the room. So the visualization, that's the important part, right?
It's exactly what you said. Right? I think it's an alignment exercise, right? A lot of people skip that first exercise of tell me what your current state is, right? From business lens, from a technical lens. But a lot of folks will say, hey, I already know the current state. I know the problems. And if you talk to X, right, you'll talk to X, you get one answer. You talk to Y in the same organization, you'll get another answer. And they sit 5 feet away from each other. The reality is we don't all have the same problems. We don't all have we don't all share the alignment that we think we do. And so if you think about it, The quote I like to use all the time is Einstein was at once asked, like, if you were given an hour to solve a problem, what would you do? He said, I would spend 58 minutes trying to understand the problem and 2 minutes solving it. And that's exactly what I'm saying here, right? It's understand the current state, because that's understanding the problem. Solving it is usually just a templated exercise, right? It's, okay, I understand you have an abandoned problem. These are how you solve abandoned problems. You have an onboarding problem. This is how you solve onboarding problems. You have an XYZ problem. This is how you solve that. But it's understanding that you're solving the right problem. That's the hard part. That's the alignment that generally no one actually creates. So from a technology side, if you can create that diagram and say, hey, every single person in the organization has agreed that this is your technology system schematic. Well, now we know what the problems are, and everyone can agree that these are the problems because you can see it on this map. And from a business lens, if you create that process diagram, you can look at everyone and say, hey, this is what you've told me the process is. But not only the process, I'm inputting where you've told me you feel that the process isn't meeting your needs, right? You're not able to do cases. And boom, now we have an understanding of what those are, and we're aligned on it, right? So because as I said earlier, value isn't always just dollars and cents. Value is also optimizing the process for your business users, right? It's not always just making it easier for your end customer to convert. It's also making your business throughput as optimized as possible. So understanding the feelings are important there. And now we can say we have an alignment on what the problem is. Why are we actually here? What are we trying to solve? Now we just need to actually figure out, how do we put a value behind each one of these problems, right? And that's where the data-driven conversation comes in.
Okay, so just before we get onto that last bit there, the data-driven, so the audience, if you missed that, is that Patrick has said from the beginning, is right now, is current state, as much as keeping up with Joneses, and Patrick has already said it from the beginning, the want or need to keep up with the new technology. Don't skip past the need to get after the new technology unless you've understood the current state first. And for the key part there, and I like the word you used, alignment. The person sitting 5 feet or even next door to you, 2 feet away and 1 feet away, sees the world differently, and their problem is different to your problem. Unless you air the problem and get it agreed and got that alignment, then I think what you always be doing is, as I've seen it on projects where colleagues are arguing in front of a supplier who's trying to capture requirements, and they can't agree on the problem because they never took the time to baseline it. Like 101. Okay, so Patrick has said that from the very beginning. So we've got alignment on our alignment exercise. We're agreeing on our current state on our 3 different challenges. We've got the technology challenges, business challenges, and operational challenges. Then out of there, you're coming up with the validation exercise based on data, which I think is another key point there, is it's not anecdotal evidence of we think it goes that way, or we kind of feel it goes that way. So we'll know, now we need to see the actual data now. It's data-driven decision-making. Yep.
Yeah, you nailed it. Yeah, that's perfect. Exactly.
All right. And then so from that last one, where you've done the validation based on your use cases, you've put it now into what you called a priority matrix. And then I like how you've put your value against your projects or your business and technology changes. And the closest to the left-hand side is obviously the highest value at the least amount of change. So you want to focus on, as your words there, the quick wins. That's why that's probably the quickest and easiest way, and probably a great model to show your clients, customers, that the more work you do out to the side, it's going to take your time and money. Versus if you backed it up closest against the 0 time, most value, this is where we want to focus now, and it's probably going to go like that. Awesome. All right. Okay. So now we've got our approach. Now, the fun part. So now you've been through this many years, big clients, big consultancies you've worked for in the past. Now, if you could, do it again, or maybe because you're doing it yourself as your own business now, as opposed to working for another one, what would you do differently, or are you still doing it, or have you tweaked it a little?
Yeah, I mean, this is where I think it's awesome to get to the point where I've been doing this for years, right? And I think we were jamming a little bit before we started recording here. We were talking about, there's no such thing as failing. There's just folks that didn't learn from what they did, right? And so it would be hard for me to say that I would do anything differently, because it would be almost saying that I could have gotten here without trying different things. That being said, I definitely think I made some mistakes in exactly what I just mentioned. There were times where I didn't learn my lesson. And that's where I think I would fixate this question on, which is if for your audience and for anyone listening out there, I think there's no wrong answer. There's no bad thing to do. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to fail.
Yes.
You're going to feel like you failed. But if you didn't learn, that's failure. If you learn from what you did, if you grow, you continue to kind of expedite your career growth, you're fine and you're doing the right things. So now come back to your question, right? What could I have done differently? I think there were times where I drank a little bit too much of the Kool-Aid. And a lot of what I'm saying combats a lot of what I would call the Kool-Aid, right? I started my career at Accenture. It's no secret that Accenture is absolutely a behemoth in the space when it comes to consulting. And they have a lot of things that they do in very specific ways. And so, I think for your audience, there's a lot of, this is the way you got to do it. This is the way you have to do it. There's books out there. And one of the things that I've seen that you've said, and I think you nail it on the head, is these are frameworks to guide you. They are not thing that you have to do exactly to get results. And I think that was a challenge. And that was something that was really hard for me to understand, is everything, all these self-help books and all these things that are out there to kind of help you, guide through your career, guide you through a project, guide you through talking to a client, the right way to do certain things. These are guidelines, they're guardrails, and they're for you to take, and they're for you to adapt to your specific circumstances, and they're for you to adapt to your specific situations and to flourish. But if you take it and just do it exactly step by step and then come back and go, hey, it didn't work, well, that's because it was a guideline. It was a guardrail, right? It's not one size fit all. These are the guardrails, and you need to adapt. And so I think, in drinking the Kool-Aid, I think absolutely these were things that in the beginning of my career in drinking the Kool-Aid, I absolutely flourished because I drank some of the Kool-Aid, but I also started getting myself into traps, which was, hey, how come the Kool-Aid doesn't work every time? Because I took it as a checklist. I do this step, then I do this step, then I do this step, and then we all go party because we've succeeded and we've created a massive amount of value, right? And I would get to the last step and be like, where's the value? These were the steps. Where's the value? And so I think the one thing I can say that for absolute certainty that I had a hard time learning from was these are all guardrails. They're all guidelines. They're all for you to adapt and to really flourish by implementing them correctly and by adapting them correctly to your particular situations. I think I learned that the hard way. I think let's call it, quote unquote, failed a couple more times that I probably needed to, until I learned, hey, this is a checklist. For this customer, I need to swap out 3 and 4, and I need to add a 3A, 3B, and 3C, because that's what makes sense for this customer. So I still started with the root. I still started with the framework, but I adapted it to my specific situations. And experience allowed me to actually recognize that, hey, I needed to do, XYZ things in between these particular steps. And candidly, I think I probably could have learned that a little bit faster than I originally had. So I would definitely do that a little bit differently. But I think you've talked about in the past, like, your book is intended to digest, read, treat as a rubric, and then adapt. How do you adapt it to your particular circumstance? So I think that's the one big thing that's been a takeaway for me.
Yeah, excellent. And I admit the same also, that that probably as a newbie and like I modeled a lot of, maybe also my family, there was some builders, some carpenters, and so I was around the building trade, and so I saw what they called amateurs, and they become novice or juniors, apprentices, and then journeymen, and then master builders. And so I modeled HOBA around that with business architecture, because I saw it was very similar. And I was like, when I started, I was the same thing too. And I was applying things, and I was like, you know what? And then I start getting into bigger clients, and I thought, wait a minute, I think everyone is just pulling this stuff off the shelf, and no one is really thinking about how to apply it. And this has been going on for 2 years until they called me, and they're still trying to apply it straight from the book. And I reckon that's not the way to go. But then I think there's a bit of, what is the word? It's almost like almost not like the emperor's new clothes, where the child points out that, hey, the emperor's got no clothes, but someone puts their hand up, and it's almost shoot the messenger. It's almost, you got to be the brave guy to put your hand up to say, guys, I don't think the emperor's gotten close.
Yeah.
And so that takes a bit of balls. And so all kudos to you, man, because I know what that was like, being in that situation, putting my hand up a few times. Is like, you know what? It's almost like if we're on the ship and this is the Titanic, I can tell you, if we keep going the same way we're going, and I'm still sitting on the ship with you, we're all going down. So I'm going to put my hand up, and if that means me standing on the bow with the captain to say, hey, Captain, we're heading the wrong direction, buddy. You might have to take it out of overdrive, or we're going to have to turn this thing some way. You on board or not?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's exactly. Yeah, it's and it's a scary thing to do, and I think I recognize that, and for your audience, I think fear played a lot of part as to why it took me so long to just put my hand up and say, hey, we can't just apply this verbatim for every single thing we do, right? I think fear does play a part, because you're early in your career, you're drinking the Kool-Aid, you're being told this is what it is, and I think there's a miscommunication in some of that, which is, I don't think anyone ever intended for newbies to just apply it verbatim, but there is a little bit of fear on the newbie side, which is, do I know enough to even diverge from this checklist? Am I experienced enough to make that call? And I think it's that balance of, you are the best person to do it because you're the one on the ground. You might not be the most experienced, but you're the one that's there, right? So you're the one that's actually capable of making that decision with the most amount of information. Even if you went to someone that's a little bit more senior, that has the experience, they still can't make the best call because they're not the ones that are there. It's up to you. You're up close and personal. So I think it's having that courage to put the hands up and say, hey, we can't just follow this because X, Y, and Z, and we need to do a little bit differently. These are things that are out there. They're industry standards. They're best practices for a reason. But how do we apply them? And I like the word you use, which is application, right? It's great knowing stuff, and it's great being able to rattle it off the top of your head. But the critical thinker, the folks that can apply this stuff, those are the ones that actually get ahead in life.
You said the word there, the critical thinker. Is that actually Jonathan, one of the previous guests, talked about that, about critical thinking, and it's and us as consultants, whether junior or senior, is that we have to apply that critical thinking, and that is to challenge and challenge the status quo and ask the question, which I've said to a client before, when they said that I said, what's your methodology? Well, fail fast. What do you mean fail fast? And there was their default mode of just trying absolutely anything, and they had a history of failed projects, and they go, but we did try because we failed fast. And I go, but what you're not doing is thinking about why you're trying it and why are you failing. You're just repeating. And it's like, okay, the critical thinking is just gone out the door. Think about what you're doing and why. So, kudos there, man. You covered it perfectly. Alrighty. So we'll wrap it up there. Thank you very much, Patrick. So what we'll do, if so for people and so want to get a hold of you, I'll put your contact details, and because now you're off on your own, you've got your own business there, and if they want to get in contact with you, they can. Well, we'll put the link to your profile on LinkedIn and also the company to get hold of you. If there's any slides or anything that you want me to attach into the show notes, then send them through. Maybe maybe your approach to a little tempter for the some prospects there that might have listened to that, like the way you operate, quite how simple about value realization. Okay. And we will post this up. Hopefully, it'll only be about a week or two, and then I'll tag you on LinkedIn. You'll see it on YouTube, and then once it's there, you can share it around to your contacts, and they get a bit of insight about how you run your transformations and realize value realization.
All right, I appreciate it, and thanks for having me on, and for your audience, thanks for listening.
My pleasure. Thank you, my friend. Okay, we look forward. I want to catch up with you. Actually, let's say it now, because as your business is growing, I want to stay in touch to see how you're getting on. Let's say in about a year's time, maybe short of that, because hopefully I'll be over the States in about 6 months if all goes well. And so we'll catch up, and then we'll have a part 2, maybe in the States.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's do it in person if you're here in the States. So that'd be great.
Yeah, I would be honored. Okay, my friend. Okay. Right. Thank you very much. enjoy your day. I think you're daytime over there.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, and it's evening here, about bedtime. All right. Okay, my friend. Have a good evening. Okay. Catch you later.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.